so thank you for joining me. I want to say that I do have a graduate degree in the humanities and social sciences, but I am not a criminologist, um, and I don't write academic papers about social theory, but I am on the periphery of that world, and as I'm a researcher, and so I do read a lot of papers and articles, and wanted to talk a little bit today about something that was brought to my mind again recently, which is white woman syndrome. And white woman syndrome is basically the media's fascination with missing white women. And not just any white women, women of a particular demographic. Um, so I'm going to be telling you guys today a little bit about white women's missing white women's syndrome. We're going to do a little bit of backstory on the Gabby Petito and Brian laundry case. And I'm not going to get into the particulars of that case too much because then I run the risk of not only being hypocritical by covering this story too much, but also there are a lot of people out there actually doing some good coverage of the case. So in particular, Agenda Free TV does some really good coverage. Steve Lookner on Agenda Free TV, he has been doing some really good live coverage of the Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie case. So if you really want to get caught up on that, you could check out some of his live streams that he has done over the past few days. All right, so I'm going to take just a quick little break to get a glass of water. I've already got a cup of tea, and then we'll start the root pack and we'll get into this. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back in just a moment. All right, and we are back and going to get into the root pack here a little bit, and then we'll start getting into the timeline of the Gabby Petito missing persons case. I'm just going to go on simple here while we're having a chat. So my research today is inspired by the recent coverage of the Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie case. And my main source for today is a study and an article written by Dr. Danielle Slakoff and Hank F. Fredella of Cal State. That article, you can find it online. It's open access, so you don't have to have any sort of login account, pay for anything, no paywalls. Slakoff and Fredella's paper is titled Media Messages Surrounding Missing Women and Girls, the Missing White Woman Syndrome, and Other Factors That Influence Newsworthiness. So if you're interested in that, that is available online. What I'll do is I'll pop that link to it in the chat during the next break. So the timeline for... So those not familiar, there's currently a bit of a media frenzy surrounding the case of Gabby Petito, who is a missing person. Gabby and her fiance, sometimes described as fiance, sometimes as boyfriend, her partner, Brian Laundrie, they went on a cross-country trip. In her van, they left on July 2nd. Between July 2nd and the middle of August, they were regularly posting on Instagram, and I believe posted at least one YouTube video. And then on August 12th, someone reported a domestic dispute. Cops pulled over Petito and Laundrie, and there is body cam footage, actually. You can watch that with audio. I won't be showing that. But they determined that it was not a domestic dispute, that it was more so a mental health situation. And rather than charge Gabby Petito, with domestic abuse, because Brian apparently had some scratches on him, instead of charging her, they decided to separate the two of them. Brian Laundrie was given a hotel room, and Gabby was given the van. And they had to stay apart from each other for the rest of the evening. So Gabby Petito's last Instagram post was on August 25th, but her parents questioned whether she had posted that, and it was also the last time her parents heard from her. On September 1st, Brian Laundrie, her fiance, Gabby's fiance, returns home, and I believe they live in Sarasota, Florida. Brian Laundrie returned home and in Petito's van without her. And it wasn't until September 11th that her family reported her missing, because they, I don't think, knew that she didn't return with him. Then on Friday, Brian Laundrie was reported missing by his family. At that point, he was a person of interest, but not a suspect, so they didn't have enough to be tracking him and things like that. So right now, his whereabouts are unknown. They are currently searching for him. And just a side note before I get into everything else, it is interesting that this young white man is described as missing rather than on the run, but that is a discussion for another day. So basically, what you're seeing right now with Gabby Petito is a perfect example of missing white woman syndrome. And again, missing white woman syndrome is media and public fascination with missing white woman. But the study that Slakoff and Fridella did showed that you have to be a particular kind of white woman for you to fall into missing white woman syndrome status. But whether you are the right kind of white woman, the ideal white woman victim, if you're white, if you're a white woman or girl, you're much more likely to have the media pay attention to the fact that you are missing, and you will more likely get repeated coverage in the media, at the very least. It is actually quite difficult to find media coverage of missing minority women and girls, particularly in America, black women and girls. And this study that Slakoff and Fridella did is based on American statistics and media outlets. So what I'm discussing today in particular will be focusing on America, how this pertains to America, and actually you see missing white woman syndrome the most in America. But I am Canadian, and I can attest that it happens here too. So there's that. And basically how it works out is, black women and girls in America get the least amount of coverage when they are missing. And what's interesting and devastating is that black women and children make up just 7% of the American population, but they account for 10% of all missing persons cases in America. And I'd say if you spoke to somebody, you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody who on the spot can mention a case of or name a missing black woman or child, or a missing minority in general. But there have been some cases where you see that other minorities do get more coverage. For example, Elisa Lam. I believe she was Southeast Asian, Canadian, and her case got quite a bit of coverage. It became a phenomenon. So you will even see white, Hispanic, Asian women and children getting more media coverage than black women and children in America. And the Elisa Lam case is interesting all on its own, so I would recommend having a look at that. You can find it everywhere online if you're interested. Again, I won't be talking too much about particular cases and examples of missing white woman syndrome, simply because I don't want to perpetuate that. And I'm just here today to talk about why missing white woman syndrome happens and what it is. And so on this note of most people would be hard-pressed to name a missing black woman, for example, you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody who can't name a missing white woman from history. So most people can name a missing white woman or girl. So you have one of the most classic cases is John Benet Ramsey. There was also Lacey Peterson and Lacey Peterson, who was ultimately had been killed by her husband Scott Peterson, and then there was also Natalie Holloway, who went missing while on vacation, and um, while an individual named Vandersloot is suspected of the crime, no one has been charged, and her body was never found. Those stories became huge media phenomenon. And part of the reason is because those girls and women were, quote unquote, the ideal victims, the ideal white victims. Um, and as a side note, I want to recommend to you guys um, a bit that you can find, a bit by Patrice O'Neill that you can find on YouTube. It's called High Quality White Woman. High Quality White Woman. And it basically is a 5-minute lesson in missing white woman syndrome. And it's really good, and he made a lot of the points that I'm going to make today, but much funnier. But he says, it would be hard for most people to think of the name of a missing black woman or girl. All right, so just to recap, doing a little bit of a different stream today. To our viewers, my name is Nicole, aka Aunt Triffy, and I'm doing some casual playthrough of Cuphead while chatting about missing white woman syndrome as it pertains to the recent Gabby, what's her name? See, the Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie case. And so I'm not really going for high scores today. I was going to go for some golden polls, but I think I'd rather talk about the topic at hand. So I really started to think about this a lot over the weekend because the coverage of the Petito case has just exploded. I often listen to Broadcastify, which is a free scanner website. So you can listen to, I often listen to it when there's natural disasters, hurricanes, floods. I'm interested in weather events. And over the past few days, the area where they're searching for Brian Laundrie has been the top most listened to channel on Broadcastify. So that's Sarasota. If you go to broadcastify.com right now and go to listen and top feeds, it'll be right there, guaranteed. I don't even need to go. I last looked at it last night. It was the top one, and they're searching for him again today. So it's definitely still the top one. The interest in this case cannot be understated. It's like nothing. It's like these really extreme missing white woman cases come in waves. Every few years, you get one that just captivates the media, and then the media is what perpetuates it. And you have your Nancy Graces and things like that. Fox News is having a field day with this. They're one of the ones covering it the most right now, and it's not fair. A lot of things in life aren't fair. That is true, but any missing person deserves media coverage and deserves their name and their face out there in the world so that the community can be looking for them. This is how you can find missing people. And why should, the color of someone's skin or the fact that they're a pretty white woman as opposed to maybe an older, not so pretty white woman or a black woman compared to a young white lady. Why does the cute, pretty white lady get to have all the media coverage? and just suck all of the oxygen out of it, and there's nothing left for anybody else, you know. So that is an absolute injustice in our society, and it's something that I felt like coming on here and exploring today. So I'm going to take a quick little break to refill my tea. And then when we come back, I'm going to talk to you specifically about some of the things that have perpetuated missing white woman syndrome in our society. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back shortly. Alrighty, and we're back. Um, so You might be wondering, why is missing white woman syndrome? Why does this exist? Why does this phenomenon exist? Well, to put it really plain and simply, um, it pretty much has to do with ratings and money. Like, pretty much money. Everything comes down to money. Uh, so, the term, and I want to note that the term missing white woman syndrome is said to have been coined by Sherry Parks of the University of Maryland. That's not quite certain, but she claims she coined it, and I'll give it to her. Um, so, why does this phenomenon exist? It exists because the missing white woman stories get longevity in the media. They're glorified, and while stories of missing minorities are pretty much ignored. Um, and part of the reason that this happened uh, and has happened is because of Megan's Law. So this was a part of the argument made by Slickoff and Fradella in their paper, which I still need to link in the chat. I will do that. So their argument is that Megan's Law is a very good representation of missing white woman syndrome. So, missing white woman syndrome has distorted the way we view missing persons cases. Um, and basically, Megan's Law is named for a young woman who was brutally raped and murdered by her sex offender neighbor. There was huge public outcry around this case. And so, where it took place, New Jersey, they enacted Megan's Law, which is when sex offenders need to make their home and work addresses public. So, basically, the sex offender registry. And now this is an American cross country sex offender registry. You would think this would be a good thing, and it does obviously have good sides to it for community safety. But again, Megan's Law has distorted the way we look at missing persons cases because Megan's Law leaves the public to sort of believe that the danger comes from strangers, the people you don't know, and the people who need to have their locations made public. When in actuality, any woman or girl or child, no matter what their ethnicity, are more likely to be harmed, injured, abused, molested, raped by a family member or friend. So think about the fallacy of stranger danger and how we, I'm an elder millennial. I was taught to be afraid of strangers, never take candy from strangers, be afraid of all vans, things like that. But in actuality, and women are most likely to be harmed, hurt, killed by somebody they know. So Megan's Law sort of gave the public the perception that strangers were the most dangerous thing in the world to women, when in actuality, it's usually domestic abuse, which doesn't get covered by the media, not like a missing white woman does. So the point with Megan's Law is that the media is very powerful in shaping public perception of missing women, all missing women. And because the media will focus on missing white women primarily, missing white women and girls, and a particular kind of missing white woman or girl. It makes the public believe that white women are more at risk and white girls are more at risk, and that they're at risk from strangers. When in actuality, white women and girls are at no more risk than minorities. Minorities are actually more at risk of, you know, at times, or about the same rates. But the outrage towards Megan's Law, the coverage that it got, and the coverage that all, cases of missing white women get, has led people to believe that white women are more at risk, and further victimizing white women for ratings. And so, why does this happen? Why? Why do we, and the media, why does the media focus so much on white women, and why do we get so fascinated with these stories? Because we do, we get fascinated with them. JonBenet Ramsey, when I was a kid, was on the cover of everything for, God, a couple of years. And on the Inquirer for probably a good 10 years on and off. And anytime there was an update, it made news. Like, it was all over the news. I'll never forget what that little girl's face looks like. But I can't tell you the name of a little missing black girl from around the same time. So, why does this happen? It basically comes down to critical race feminism. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about some critical race theory, just very basic kind of stuff, and focus particularly on critical race feminism. So, critical race feminism argues that white and minority women will be treated differently by the media, which we have already discussed. And critical race feminism argues that both face sexism, but only minority women face double marginality because they experience racism. So for all women, and there's I kept mentioning the ideal victim and the ideal white woman or girl victim, because the media likes to, JonBenet Ramsey, for example, adorable, very beautiful little girl. She did the creepy pageant circuits. She was always doll. She looked literally like a doll. So she had the look. And she was a little white girl from an important family. So it was everything, wrapped up with a bow. And you know what? She went missing at Christmas, so that was not a pun. For anybody who really knows the case, that was not a pun. So for all women, there are certain aspects that get played up or played down or used against them or for them in media coverage. So for all women, their age, their marital status, their motherhood status, their profession, it can all influence how a woman is presented in the media when she is missing. And media underreports stories of missing marginalized women and girls, and totally over-reports cases of missing white women and girls, no matter what they look like or their background. And according to Slakoff and Fridella, again in their paper and their study, Media Messages Surrounding Missing Women and Girls, the Missing White Women Syndrome, and Other Factors That Influence Newsworthiness, Black women are the most underreported group of all. Missing black women are also more likely than white women to have their profession listed, which is interesting, in a news report. Um, if a news report exists, and they usually only get one. Black women don't usually get follow up stories. But if the news story exists, an interesting thing is that their profession is usually listed to legitimize them, humanize them, and make it seem like present them to the media or present them to the public through the media as a person who is worth looking for. But white women are much more rarely presented through their professions. White women are usually presented through their marital status or their motherhood, their connections to their family. And all women, missing women and girls, teenage girls and women, are categorized by their sexuality within media reports. So we see some other things come up within the argument of critical race feminism and how the media covers white women and girls as opposed to black women and girls and other minority women and girls who are missing. So here's just some. This has to do with all missing women and girls. And here's a few interesting tidbits. Girls under the age of 13 are more often than not within their news report described as innocent if they're missing. If there's a news report for any missing woman between the age of 18 and 29, they're more likely to have info in that report about consensual sex or sexuality. So it would mention whether they had been, if there had been a report that possibly they had been abducted and raped. There was some evidence of that, and now they can't find the person. It will be very important to have in that media report that it was non-consensual. And women of all backgrounds who are missing between the ages of 18 and 29, if they work as a sex worker, between those ages, that is more likely to be listed in their news report of being missing, which in our society we know that sex work should be completely legitimate and that individuals should be looked at also as having worth and worthy of being looked for because they are part of the community. But generally speaking, especially in conservative American media, that would be used to delegitimize the missing person. And interestingly enough, girls and women under the age of 18 and over the age of 30, their sexuality is very rarely brought up because society, media, we like to present young girls of any background. Well, honestly, African American girls are often sexualized and perceived as older. So I'm not going to actually say a blanket statement and say this pertains to all women and girls. But most stories of missing women and girls that have to do with people under the age of 18 or over the age of 30, their sexuality is very rarely mentioned. Because they either, on the end where they're younger and the media knows it's better to present them as innocent, or they're older, and women over 30 apparently aren't sexual beings, and and also their motherhood or their marital status will be used to elevate them as an individual rather than their sexuality. And I just want to say again that sexuality is not evil, immoral, or anything. Um, but the US media and Canadian media, all different sorts of conservative leaning media around the world, do portray it as that, as immoral. Um, so something mentioned in our article that I've been referencing is that you'll often get a story of a missing woman, and if she happened to be the other woman in an affair, that will be mentioned to delegitimize her. And you have to understand that the more legitimate a victim seems and is presented through the media, the more likely they are to get the coverage needed to possibly be found, or for more evidence to be found, because their face is out there, the info is out there, the interest is getting garnered. You get your weird internet sleuths who are doing videos and looking at every little bit of, for example, the Gabby Petito body cam coverage. They're looking at all of that and trying to break it down. So with a lot of media coverage, that's what you get. Is a better chance for leads and evidence. So it can't be understated the injustice and the inequity that exists with missing white woman syndrome. And just to cap off on some of those interesting little bits, women over the age of 30 that are missing, any woman at all, they're more often described as mothers. So if they're mothers, you're a better victim for the media. And on the shittier end of the stick, missing black children are more likely to be categorized as runaways in the media. And again, a tool to vilify them and delegitimize them, and to make them less worthy of your attention and less worthy of finding. Again, an absolute injustice. So, we'll take another quick break here soon. And then I'm going to cap off with some final thoughts. And, yeah. This was kind of something that I really wanted to get off my chest, because every time the media explodes with another missing white woman, and I'm not saying anything against Gabby Petito and the case. Essentially, it would be great if every missing person got this sort of attention. I hope that she's found alive and well. That is what we all hope for. But, the case is taking up a lot of oxygen within the media, and it's good to look at some of the reasons why. And to also consider some of the missing women who aren't making it to the news, and why that happens. So I'm going to go get a little glass of water. I will return in a couple of minutes. I won't be gone long. And I will cap off with a few of my final thoughts on the Gabby Petito case and how it relates to missing white woman syndrome. Alrighty, and we are back. So, haven't played a whole lot of Cuphead, but we'll continue with the root pack while I give some closing thoughts on critical race feminism and missing white woman syndrome and how it pertains to the most recent case of Gabby Petito. So to kind of clue things up, white women and girls are much, much more likely to get repeated media coverage. So not just one story, but repeated stories. And then sometimes you get your phenomenon type cases like JonBenet Ramsey's, your Lacey Peterson's, Natalie Holloway, or most recently Gabby Petito, where they just take the media runs with it, and the public just eats it up, and it becomes an absolute frenzy. And then because of that, a lot of other women and girls who are missing of different minorities don't get any coverage or repeated coverage in the media because the oxygen's all taken up by all the missing white women. And again, hey, you have to be the right kind of white woman. Like me, for example, I am over the age of 30. I don't have any children. Conventionally, I guess sort of cute, but not really all that pretty. Not blonde. Blonde helps a lot. That helps a great deal. Being blonde and pretty. Being pretty, you have to be pretty to be one of the top contenders in the tier of white women syndrome for one of those phenomenon cases. Yeah. So will this stop? Will missing white woman syndrome stop, and will it level out? Will we talk about missing women of other minority groups? Will we finally ever talk about black women and missing black women and children as much and in the same capacity that we do white women? Well, it depends. It depends on people recognizing that this is something that exists, and that this disparity is out there, and that the media perpetuates it. But, the media commodifies the news, and the media has huge financial incentives to garner high ratings, get all those clicks and those views. So now today it's not only news outlets like Fox or CNN, you have, your individual streamers, and just any individual who wants to be an internet sleuth can pop on YouTube, upload a video, and tell you what they think of it all. And again, media outlets showcase missing young, white, attractive women and girls because their research actually shows they simply get more viewers and more dollars that way. So should you feel bad for getting caught up in this? We all kind of get caught up in these missing person cases, right? They become everything anybody's talking about. I keep going back to JonBenet Ramsey, but for me, that was the pivotal one, the most memorable. And, should we feel bad? Because we get interested in these cases. Well, again, as long as you recognize the disparity and you give some energy to other missing women and girls and children, that you don't have to feel bad about it. But it's important to know that there are countless stories of missing minority women and girls that never make it to the media. And that you know, feeling bad about getting caught up in it is kind of wasted energy because the media manipulates their audience. They humanize the missing white women and girls via their descriptions. So, they're more described as innocent instead of runaways, and described as mothers, and described by their family and their innocence and their purity. Um, and so, you know, white women are not more prone to being snatched up and kidnapped or murdered than any other group of women in the United States, or Canada, but they get all the media coverage. So then there's a public perception that white women are more in danger, more victims in our, just more victimizing women, white women in our society. The whole damsel in distress. And basically, missing white woman syndrome won't end until missing white woman syndrome stories are profit. Hold on, let me backtrack. Basically, missing white woman syndrome stories won't end until missing minority women's stories are profitable to the media. That's basically what it comes down to. And basically, the media needs to also not put the needs of white families and their victims first. That's really what it ends up boiling down to. So I wanted to just cap off with a few more of the stats. I kind of mentioned them already. And if you're interested in this topic and you want to get more involved, I'd highly recommend checking out the Black and Missing Foundation. In particular, they're a great not-for-profit in the United States. They're doing great work on this sort of thing, getting people to know and be aware of the issue of Black and missing women and girls and people in the United States and the lack of media coverage that they get. So again, Black women and girls make up fewer than 7% of the total population in America, but they represent nearly 10% of all missing Americans. And this is according to the American Crime Information Center. And again, white women not more likely to be abducted, but you end up thinking so because the media portrays it that way. So probably do another couple runs here and then clue up. Just to put a final cap on it. So again, this discussion today was inspired by the recent media coverage of the Gabby Petito case. Gabby Petito is a young woman who was traveling across country with her fiance, and her fiance returned in her van without her, and she was declared missing on September 11th, 2021. They're currently looking for her and her fiance, Brian Laundrie, who is quote unquote missing or quote unquote on the run. And Gabby Petito is getting a lot of news coverage. And so it brought to mind missing white woman syndrome. So my discussion today, my main source of information was the article and study, Media Messages Surrounding Missing Women and Girls, the Missing White Woman Syndrome, and Other Factors That Influence Newsworthiness. This was written by Dr. Danielle Slakoff and Hank F. Fradella, and they were with Cal State when they did that study. And also please check out the Black and Missing Foundation for more information about missing Black women, children, and individuals in the United States. And because this talk was inspired by the recent case of Gabby Petito, who is missing, she's a young girl, if you have any information about her, get in touch with the Sarasota police. I do hope she is found safe and sound. All right, well, I want to thank you for tuning in to my discussion today about missing white woman syndrome and how it relates to the most recent case of Gabby Petito. I've been Nicole Penny, this is Nicole, aka Aunt Triffy, and if you like this kind of stuff, let me know, and I'll be trying to do a bit more of it in the future. So thank you very much for tuning in.